I'm Lord Kirkhope. I'm Timothy Kirkhope, and welcome to this webinar of the Conservative European Forum. It's on a very important theme, I think you'll agree, on the whole question of AI, which has really hit the headlines in Britain in a big way, but has also been progressed in the European Union, and in particular in the European Parliament. So I'm particularly honoured, we're all honoured, I think, to have with us Axel Voss, a member of the European Parliament, who has been an MEP since 2009, a very good colleague of mine when I was there. He is EPP Group Coordinator on the Legal Affairs Committee. He's been the rapporteur on the subject of AI in a digital age, which he's just had quite a task pushing through the Parliament. And I think, like me, has had to put up with this wonderful experience of a so-called trilogue, when the different groups in Europe, different power bases all get together and work late into the night in order to try and defeat democracy in some cases. But in his case, he's managed to prevail and get something through, which is really important. Axel's currently the chair of the Mittelrhein area in Germany for the CDU party. He's a lawyer. He was he's a lecturer on EU affairs in Remagen as well, and he's got quite a distinguished career behind him. So I'm delighted that you could make it, Axel, this evening. So what I'm proposing to do, ladies and gentlemen, is to ask Axel to speak to us on this subject, and then we'll deal with some questions and answers, which I'm sure you'll all have. If you haven't already got them, you'll have them by the time he's finished, and we'll deal with that. And I look forward to your contributions in due course. But first of all, important bit, Axel, over to you.
Thank you, Timothy, and thanks also for this wonderful introduction. And I'm sending all my regards to you all and wishing you still, if I may, so a wonderful Happy New Year, and that you have a lot of energy for the year, a lot of course, the best health ever. And then also a lot of humor still, because the world is, situation is getting more strange and strange. So that's why we all need, of course, our humor in probably surviving in a way. So the AI Act, and let me start. So we did a lot in the in this mandate already on digital legislation. So we have had the Digital Services Act, where we are trying to find a way to get rid of illegal content from platforms. We have had the Digital Market Act to get a kind of a fair play in the market with the big ones. And also, of course, the AI Act. These are probably the bigger ones. There's the Data Act, there's the Data Governance Act, and so on. But here, the AI Act, and let me also make this statement that I've personally found, and this is also probably seen by all experts, AI is now the fundament of everything what might be developed in the future. So this is why AI is so important. On the other hand, a lot of citizens are fearing that this might be a kind of a shift from the power from the human beings to a machine. And that's why we thought it might be wise in regulating these a bit. And this is what we are doing. The proceedings now are still going on. We will vote on it in plenary in April. And the council already might find a kind of a common position then beforehand, but now, so far, I would say it might also be critical in both institutions that there is a kind of a majority. So we have to find a way forward here. The first problem we have met was the question of definition. So there was always a way forward when we thought, oh, this should be more a kind of a definition where we are concentrating on autonomous and self-learning yeah, let's say software or algorithms in this case. And here we found now a definition from the OECD, was created, I think, in 2019. And it's a kind of a short version of it. And so that we still are connected with international standards. So in this case, with the OECD. The whole instrument is focusing, let's say, on forbidden AI systems. What we are always saying is the situation regarding social scoring, what we have in mind in China. If you're crossing a street by red light, then you might be detected as someone and you get a kind of a bad score, and then probably you can't go to holidays or whatever this is. Of course, here we have to find the differentiation to pension administrations and other things where you also do scoring, like credit scoring, for instance. But this is then not meant as social scoring. What we have in mind here is a forbidden system. There has been a big fight. What probably won't happen in the UK, of using biometrical data for law enforcement purposes. So we have a majority here in the House, more, let's say, of left-wing orientated friends, and they are always scary. And Timothy might remembering the personal name records negotiations at that time. What we have in mind in using these data for more security, but the left-wing orientated parties here in the House, they are always seeing that the government or the administration has a kind of a big surveillance on everyone and so on. But so this has a kind of a dispute between political parties here in the House, and at the end also with the other institutions, especially the Council. And we find an agreement that now national security sorry, is out of the scope. So because, and this was something what the EPP group in this House always were fighting for, that security is always an issue, and that's why we need a kind of a different approach than all the other issues itself. So also biometrical data was the next point to it all, or let me start differently. So we have these forbidden AI systems, and the main purpose of this legal tool now is to concentrate on so-called high-risk AI systems, meaning that these AI systems are affecting somehow fundamental rights. They are affecting probably the environment. And that's why we thought we need a kind of a special focus on high risk. If you have a kind of a low risk system or non-risk system, so they are more than less out. So we haven't concentrated on these. If you have a high risk system, and here you can argue about what is a high risk system. The Commission came up with this idea in saying high risk system, meaning AI system in a critical infrastructure. But then we thought, just to give you kind of an example, a soda machine in a space agency, what contains algorithms on an AI system, can't be really an AI high-risk system. So that's why we said also the context has to be in place where for what reason you are using these. Of course, the intention of the one who is developing these plays always a role. So of course you can take your knife, what you're using at home and at your desk, to kill somebody, or a car if you normally you're driving with these, but also you can kill somebody with it. And also this is a kind of an, what we have seen with the AI algorithms, that there should be a kind of a differentiation what the intention and the context of the system is. There has been, just to give you also here an example, it was predictive policing. So we have this was a kind where police can predict where might take place the next robbery or whatever in the eyes of the left-wing orientated parties. It has been a kind of a no-go, and we were saying, oh, but there are some use cases where you really make kind of an added value out of it. And so that's why then we came to this situation where we balance this. Also, emotional recognition. We have the exemption there for health reasons. It might be still be in place that you can use it, but not for other reasons. The problem what we are facing sometimes in this, and this is leading to legal uncertainty, you have already installed in planes or cars kind of a system what is looking to your face, and if your eyes turning down in a way and you're going to sleep and so on, then this system should wake you up somehow. So that's why we also have to differentiate here that for health reasons or security reasons it should be used for. So we have exemptions also for military purposes, AI systems for military. We have an exemption for research, and we have an exemption also for open source algorithms. So algorithms that are created by a lot of people in an open way. So, and here we thought this is getting more and more difficult to have someone to be responsible and to be liable for it and so on. So there has been a big discussion about these so-called foundational models. These are models where you have a kind of a general purpose integrated, and like ChatGPT, you're using this basic model and adding something for the chat. So you can use the same foundational model then for different purposes. But here ChatGPT, for instance, is only for chatting in a way. And here we have a kind of an additional problem. If this might end up with these adding on this foundational model, if this is then a high risk situation, then how they might get information from the creators of the fundamental model or from the basis model. So this has been solved in a way, but there has been also resistance by Germany, France, and Italy in saying we do not want at all that this is regulated. But the parliament at the end thought, so if this the foundational model is already toxic, then everything else what you add on might also be toxic. So that's why we have had some safeguards, or we put some safeguards on it. Also the typical idea of cybersecurity, that this is in a way secured. We talked about governance structures. And what we try to avoid, this mistake, what we have done with these sort of general data protection regulation, that every member state can interpret in its own way how to use these provisions. So I would like to go more for a central interpretation of these, and now it's not what we get right now, but it's more in a way of the competition situation where you can have a kind of a system where you are more than less getting a kind of a common interpretation of these. Coming back to the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, where we are protecting personal data. Of course, if you would like to have a result out of these algorithms, what is non-biased, what is non-discriminatory, what is gender balanced, and so on, you have to train your algorithms with a lot massively with personal data. And here we have a kind of a typical problem. So in the EU, and I can't recommend to have this also in the UK at the end, but so now we found these so-called sandboxes where companies can test and train their algorithms, and either they are coming with their own data with a different purpose in using these data and testing and training, or if you are a startup, then you should provide as a sandbox more data for testing and training. The council also insisted in this real world testing, meaning also if you are giving your personal data to someone, then the European law is saying only for one purpose you can use these. But here, of course, then this is opening also for a different purpose, meaning for training, also for your algorithms. We have a lot, so and once if you are having a high risk system in place, there are some requirements for the system itself and some obligations for the deployer. So this is more than less a lot, so means a lot of bureaucracy at the end, and this is the whole tool not making very easy in using these. And of course, we had a lot of different, let's say, problems or political problems in talking about, so this national security, post-biometric identification, real-time biometric identification, then the transition period. Now we have a kind of a ranking. The forbidden system should be entering into force already after 6 months, but normally it's 24 months. We have the fundamental rights impact assessment for specific algorithms, what might also undermine the democracy and rule of law state. So how we are seeing this now, the digitalization is also, if you're coming to fake news and deep fakes and so on, then this is undermining democracy already very intensively, and Russia and China is using this also very intensively. So that's why we have to be very careful here. We have also talked about energy consumption, but this energy consumption of AI systems, normally I would say as a lawyer, this has nothing to do with the AI Act itself, but this is a typical European compromise to get the Greens on board. And now we have this, but this is more complicating things. So I wouldn't recommend to have something like this in place at the end. And so we have done all these sometimes detailed things also to ending with these so-called recommendation systems, what you might find in social media, like if you have seen this video, please, you can also see this video. And there was a kind of an idea, if the other video contains fake news or so on, then they should also have some requirements in place. What is this securing a lot? So if I'm sum up the situation in my own evaluation, it is a lot of bureaucracy what we are asking for. So this is bad for startups and for smaller companies. This is a typical situation what we are facing all the time. And so this is making the whole instrument not very kind of easygoing. On the other hand, this is not really a reason to leave the European Union, but it's also not a reason to settle your company there in the European area. So it's difficult at the end. Regarding, I'm coming back to one big problem, what we are facing also now with the creative sector. If we're coming back to these foundational models, there is one big problem, because these, so far as I'm seeing this, they are using also for training their algorithms copyright protected works. And this has, so for the creative sector, this is not a kind of big fun, because they have to live from their creativity and also would seek the remuneration. This is something where I have the feeling we need to focus in the next mandate. So we have the election on the 9th of June. And so next mandate should come to solving these problems somehow, if there is a solution. This is kind of a different question. Timothy, you're muted.
Yeah, could anybody who's not muted please turn on their mute on their while Axel is speaking, and then later on, if they want to ask a question and we go round, then obviously they can unmute when they ask the question. But it's just interrupting. Someone's got their mic on at the moment. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry, Axel.
Yeah, Timothy, you want me to continue a bit, or yeah?
Yeah. Just for a minute, we obviously I hope we're going to get some questions out of this, and yeah. I've got a couple for you to start with as well, Axel, when you finish your points.
Yeah, but so then let me add also something where I would say from my own evaluation, of course, with the AI Act, we are protecting citizens and we are trying to mitigate all the risks. But also what we should have in mind, that there is competition going on, and we are seeing that Europe is extremely lagging behind. And therefore, from my approach, I would always say we need also to invent or to support innovation more and more. And if this act should work at the end in this direction, we need also to have additional instruments in place, especially standards. We need to come forward with standards. What I have here in mind would be that if you are fulfilling as a company a kind of a standard, then you can go to the market. So a kind of an simplifying access to the market by standards. Also, there should be a kind of an idea of program of supporting SMEs, because this is extremely costly for these small and medium-sized enterprises. So there should be something in place what helps them also to invent new ideas, new business models, and so on. And because of the timeline now, because the mandate is ending, we haven't focused on overlapping to other legal instruments already. So GDPR, e-privacy, yes, but if we are looking to the medical device directive, for instance, no, and there are other sectorial instruments in place. And here this overlapping will create legal uncertainty. And this is also something, if I'm mentioning legal uncertainty, now the transition period to transfer this into national law in a way, and also let's say 2 years or 3 years later on, because this is not detailed enough, companies might face for a period of 4 or 5 years probably legal uncertainty. And this is not good for the development of AI in Europe itself. So that's why I would have loved to avoid all these, but sometimes you don't have majorities.
Okay, well, look, actually, there's no doubt about it. It's a complex area. I mean, what I wanted to just touch on with you, I mean, you know, I was involved with you with the GDPR operation, and it wasn't exactly popular with a lot of areas when we had to deal with that. But it was consistent and it was internationally understood. Now, what is worrying about all this? First of all, the British government's attitude towards it so far is that we will be very light touch, whatever that means. Hopefully, I suppose they think they can avoid the complexities which undoubtedly exist in this. My question to you is this, though. Without sort of some kind of change to the way we legislate, smart legislation to keep up with all this technological development, how can we really get people to understand what is going on? I mean, they've got lots of bright people who are developing all kinds of things at the moment, where the regulation is a little bit iffy. It's not quite clear. There's a lot of things happening which are technology and which, frankly, I almost feel we need a more psychological approach so that we can get people on board to understand that what's happening here is secure, is regulated, and is safe for them. So, you know, this is another problem. I've traveled in driverless cars now 2 or 3 times. And, well, I feel happy to be alive still, you know, and I'm sure it's all fine. But, you know, technology is brilliant. The last one I went in was in Arizona, in which I was happy to see a driver, or I thought a driver, a man sitting in front of the left-hand side, the steering wheel, reading a magazine. And I did say to him as we set off, I said, well, I'm very relieved that at least I've got you if anything goes wrong. And he just turned around and said, well, yeah, you got me, but I haven't got a driving license. So, you know, immediately then I was sort of left in the clutches of a mechanical instrument taking me across a few streets. It all worked very well, but I'm just, you know, it just seems to me that psychology here, a bit like pilotless planes, a bit like all these things that are happening around us, all this security and all these people looking at and listening to us and using data, it just worries me intensely that we can keep up with this as legislators. And how do we keep up with it if we haven't got some kind of faster moving situation here? Do you not think there is a real worry? I mean, you know, we're going off on our own in this country. The British government wants to do its own thing. It wants to be different. Now, you gave an indication a moment ago that individual countries could interpret things differently. But if we're going to have any economic advantages for European countries, and that includes ourselves, surely we have to be completely consistent and in line with each other, don't we?
Yes, so this is a very important point you're mentioning. So at first, of course, we are living with our thinking still in the old times and last century and so on. But we have to be aware that we should be open for these digital developments because they will be there. And so we can't avoid it by just ignoring. So we have to embrace these somehow these development and trying to manage that this is taking place in a kind of a value framed environment. And so this is something, and the question you also raised is, we are, as a democratic legislator and rule of law, having in mind this principle, we are too ponderous for this whole development. And for a national legislator, for a regional legislator, this is already a big challenge, either to keep up or also to find solutions to the new real world we are into. What we have done already, but nobody is paying attention too much because it was not a binding report in the so-called AIDA report, so meaning artificial intelligence in a digital age, where I was asking already, we need a flexible legislator. What we are doing here in the AI Act to give the Commission the power in updating the annexes where we are listing all these high-risk AI high-risk systems. But what we are not doing so far is also to find a proceeding where we might find in a 3-month time a kind of a democratic legitimate solution or decision for it. And this is probably what I would consider is extremely necessary to catch up with all these developments. If you are looking to the probably in 5 or 10 years time, the more and more upcoming metaverse. So this is the kind of a global virtual world without any borders. And here all of a sudden you have a totally different system, and I can't even imagine how a regional or national legislator can even regulate this. But we have to make up our minds right now, because we have seen this with social media. All of a sudden you're in a position where you can't really regulate. It's also depending on the political majorities. But here in the metaverse, all of a sudden, just from the civil law point of view, of course, we have to ask ourselves, do we need an identification system there? What court might be competent? What law might be applicable to it? And even to strange ideas, if your avatar is marrying someone, does this has consequences in the real world or not? So
yeah, so but actually, Axel, I'm going to ask Ian Morling to come in, because I know he wants to ask Web. But just let me say, this is very interesting in a sense, but if you try telling our backbenchers in the Conservative Party at the moment in Parliament about all this future without borders, etc., they're going to go spare. They're going to run around in circles. I mean, it's bad enough at the moment, frankly, the atmosphere here about borders. I mean, so when we talk in these terms and these sort of incredible sort of interstellar talk that we're doing, I mean, you're way ahead of the game on this. I mean, in the sense that, we've got to get them far enough to accept the fact that, the odd person is allowed to arrive at Dover. Never mind this sort of incredible sort of vision. But listen, I'm going to ask Ian Morling. We're hogging it slightly here. So come on, Ian, you've got a question. Please come in.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, Axel, thank you very much for fascinating and detailed, but completely comprehensible, in as much as you comprehend the essential elements of it, but you made it clear that there is much to be clarified. I'm at present advising a British based academic at UCL, who is the world leader in analyzing mobility using GPS data. So obviously completely sanitized, so respecting GDPR, the regulation. She is proposing, she's pitching to the business element of UCL, this is slightly off the record, and they're very interested in supporting her to create an app which will be for both private individuals, but also corporations, to follow the CO2 footprint as they move around. So obviously this is for ecologically minded individuals. We'll probably call it something like eco-move or eco-commute, but also, even more importantly, for companies who are obliged to analyze their employees' movements under the scope 3, which I'm learning rapidly about. But this is part of the declarations that all corporations should progressively be making about respecting the environment. How are we going to fit this app, which clearly could be seen as a snooping app, obviously, following where your employees are going? I saw yesterday that Apple at present has 160,000 employees. Obviously, we'll start in the UK. She has had as clients TfL and all sorts of different people, but clearly Europe should be our next target? What would you advise?
There you go, Axel. That's a good question. You could deal with that now, please.
So, if I'm looking to the whole situation right now, so we are seeing these big companies in the US or also in China, if you want. So, and Europe is more focusing on values and protection and so on. This is important, don't get me wrong, but we have also to think about how we can use more data, because this is really the value of this new world. And that's why you have an added value also in sharing data and processing data. And that's why you won't win the whole digitalization without data. So that's why we need to share, we need to process data and so on. Then there is a question how you are doing this. We might come up now with this so-called European health data space, because we are seeing all this research in probably having new medication, new treatments and so on. Therefore, you need massively health data. And if you're not providing these, other regions in the world will do this. So, but now to protect also the individual, you need probably kind of a third party where you can trust and what might identify you at the end, but it gives the data in a form to the processing party that they will not detect who is behind this data. So you need a kind of a system where you can secure personal data, but also to have the balance in providing data for coming up with new business models, new ideas, new knowledge, and so on. So I would always say the idea is probably a very good one, and you shouldn't hinder this, but you should find ways where you can still say personal data are secured. And this might be the solution in balancing everything. So it's complicated. Other regions are not doing this. They are very fast. And Europe can provide something to the world if we, because of this linking of value and data processing, if we can do this in a timeline where other regions are doing this without values.
Yeah, but so of course, hang on, Axel, can I just ask you, look, on that very point, a lot of problems in this country about the safety and security of people's information about data. And as you know, we were involved very much with GDPR, but there was a lot of protection in there for people's data and a lot of redress we argued for, did we not? And we got the redress through. This country's had a whole lot of miserable experiments with software of all kinds in different areas of health and latterly now in terms of running post offices. Everything's been a disaster area as far as I can see, and it's knocked the faith of people altogether in others having their data. Made it very difficult for people with the health data, with doctors, and it's very important, but people are not, they're suspicious about it all. And how on earth, therefore, can we, and also people hate politicians, as you're well aware as well, so they don't trust them either. So how on earth can we use these things well when you've got that kind of atmosphere?
Yeah, I know there's always a risk. But if we are not taking on this risk, then we will be a kind of a museum in Europe. So I would always say probably UK is better than the other European countries. But so if we do not want to be a digital developing country, or continent in this place, then we have also to find a solution for balancing personal data and using data. or usage of data. So otherwise, I can't see how we might come forward with. So,
yeah.
So there is still all the time a risk, but we have to face it, and we have to see if we would like to manage these better than other regions, then we should work on this and trying to find these solutions.
Okay, I mean, Liz Spencer, I know, wants to come in. Liz, go ahead, please. Are you there, Liz? You're on mute.
No, I have unmuted myself, Timothy.
Jolly good. Well, fire away, fire away.
Thank you. Axel, first of all, I know Sash Karim asked me to give his apologies that he couldn't join us this evening because he's in Dubai. Can I congratulate you immensely warmly for the effort you've put in to bring AI onto the European agenda? And I know how time-consuming it might have been. It's a very fast-moving field, and I have some experience in the European Union. Do you feel that the EU's decision-making procedure is sufficiently flexible to adapt rapidly enough to keep pace with changes that will come towards us?
So far, I would say our processes are not efficiently enough in meeting all these challenges of digital developments. So there is this idea, especially from my side. So of course you have always to find majorities for it, and this is very difficult for people who are in a comfort zone somehow. But I think it's extremely necessary that you're getting this flexibility as a legislator and get more efficient decision-making processes here. Otherwise, we are always lagging behind as a legislator and finding new problems and then trying to get rid of it, but then you also might find a lot of situations what you can't solve afterwards. So I think you have to give everyone who is developing something kind of an idea in which frame this should take place. If I would recommend right now for the AI Act itself, probably I personally would take another direction in saying we should first ask ourselves what we would like to achieve with AI. And then you might have the chances in having sectorial approaches on these, and you can find here some solutions better. What we are doing now is a different approach. And we are trying, especially with these so-called annexes, where we are listing forbidden systems, where we are listing these high-risk systems, that the Commission might act very efficiently in updating these. But if there is a kind of a fundamental problem with this whole regulation, then we might not be as fast as it should be. It should be to meet the problem. So, or to meet the development. So that's why I think we haven't done these in a way so far that I would say it's efficiently enough. But you have to know, because of this data protection, I'm let's say radicalizing myself a bit, because I'm seeing more and more this gap between Europe and the other regions in the world, like US and China. And this is making me so nervous that I think we need to be more open and probably taking on more risks in a way, just to catch up a bit. So probably it's not possible any longer, but then we have to find our niches. But also here we need a strategy, and from the European point of view, or my point of view, would be not, regulation is not a strategy. You need more, you need probably to prioritize. If you would like to have, let's say, the self-driving cars or smart farming, green tech, or whatever it is, to gain a lot of experience, and probably you might come to a leading position in the world, and then all of a sudden you are a kind of a player. But if you're not doing this, and this is also, I can see this in the federal system of Germany, or also in this federal system of the European Union, that everyone is doing its own, and we are not joining our forces, and we are not coming to European projects. And this means we are not catching up with all these big tech companies.
But Axel, we are democracies. And how on earth can democracies, with all our sort of protections and all the legislative functions and so on, how can we ever compete in this field with China, for instance, that doesn't need to bear that in mind at all? And how, in international terms, this is a bit of a disaster area, isn't it, for us? I mean, I don't know, but I mean, you know, things coming out of China all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think we can keep up ultimately. They're now invading the European market with their battery cars. And you know, I don't think anybody owns anything virtually in their house that hasn't got some Chinese thing in it. If it's electronics or anything like that, they've already done it. So where are we in trying to control things? If others don't control, surely economically then we are at a great disadvantage, aren't we?
Yes, we have a disadvantage because of our political fragmentation, and of course of our ponderous democratic proceedings. And this is, of course, it's always easier if there is someone deciding and saying, now we are doing this and that. But if we activating somehow our will of digital surviving, then there is also kind of a necessity, and then saying we are focusing on these. Of course, this is also a democratic process at the end, but we are focusing on some priorities. We are creating these, if this is dangerous for the personal data, a kind of a trusted third party element, and then move on. But you have to be open in providing data, in processing data. Otherwise, you can't achieve what others are achieving, especially if you're coming to these health research things. So we have seen BioNTech, for instance, has moved from Germany to UK. And this has to do also with the fact that we are not providing enough data. But if you would like to compete with the US or Chinese, they have massively data, then you also need massively data if you would like to compete. And I'm more now driven by this idea. We did a lot of things to protect our citizens, but now we have to think about how we can compete with others. And now here we need to be more open or more focused and so on. Yeah, this will, yes, this will be political and democratic decision. But also here we need to see the urgency already, the necessity in doing so. Otherwise, we will. So I have seen, let me put it this way, if you're seeing the capitalization of companies in the digital world, Europe has only 3%, Africa has 2%, and here you can see already how much we are lagging behind. And here you can see already Africa has totally different problems, but we are not really into this competition. So of course you might decide in saying, oh, let's get out of these and let's do others, and we are just consumers. But this is nothing where we can buy our bread with at the end. So that's why we need this competition. We need to step up, and probably we need to find niches where we can be a kind of a lead, or where we can get a leading position in it. And I know all these risks and also these concerns, but if we are not stepping up, somehow our citizens will more and more notice that we are so much lagging behind that this might not be the right structure any longer.
But you very kindly keep saying we, and I'm assuming when you say the we, you are including the UK, because sadly, although we're not anymore the we that you are, we are nearby and we're around. But the thing is, the British government, another thing they're saying is we're going to lead the world, folks, in all this. We're going to lead the world. That's the UK. It's going to lead the world. And I find that a sort of rather odd sort of thing. And surely the key to this, though, is that the UK and the EU must work very closely together on this. At the very least, that part of the world community should be together, surely.
Yes, yes, I totally agree. And we should find also a way. And I would consider already a kind of a Western ally situation. So we are all confronted by the Chinese, by China. And here, if we would like to survive, of course, we can rely on the American companies. But if we also would like to play a role in it, we have to come to common standards. We have to think about a kind of a Western strategy, how we would like to move forward. And also other subjects like copyright or whatever it is, we should probably more thinking transatlantic in a transatlantic way. So far also, we do not want to have this handling the data like the Chinese are doing these, but so we have a different approach, but we will probably only survive if we then have a kind of a common approach. So this is how I'm seeing this. We have traffic signals for the individual traffic with cars everywhere, but we do not have data traffic signs developed so far worldwide. But the Western world then should stand together and try to compete already with the other world. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I mean, we're coming close to our allotted time. I wonder if anybody, have I excluded anyone from making a point here before Axel? I hope that I haven't, because I think I think it is a very complex subject. I think it's fair enough to say, and I think the fact that you have been taking this on, Axel, is really quite a tribute to you, and indeed the fact that it's so necessary in this country. As I say, the problem we have partly is the fact that we've moved away from, or at least we seem to have moved away from EU diktats and regulations and so on, but we haven't yet got a path of our own. Yeah, and that's why what you've been saying to us is so important, and it is difficult. I mean, I have to say, you've explained it very well, but it is still very difficult to comprehend, and because of that, some people can actually, make things quite difficult here. Sorry, Charlie Compton, would you like to come in? You were just asking a question there. Have I missed?
Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't expecting to speak. I was just going to put the message in the chat. Yeah, I'm just interested to hear what Axel's thoughts would be around like how democracy could be kind of quickened and made efficient with AI, particularly at the kind of like the more local level and stuff, just to make it feel as though people are more part of the system in that way.
Yeah, so affected place, apart from the Middle Rhine and Yorkshire, in my case, I mean, how localized, I mean, getting understanding and so on, I mean, how, on the local basis, I mean, how is it possible? You're doing it on a European-wide basis. I'm thinking about it from a British point of view, but if you think about it more regionally, more locally, get people's understanding, is it possible? How? I think that's quite a good answer, actually.
Yeah. The problems, from my point of view, are more and more politicians who are thinking only in this national dimension. I would say they are hindering a lot of issues, and that's why it's difficult. You need to have someone in place who is ready to be open for other ideas. And of course, now, if we're coming to companies in using AI, you have to convince companies that they should use AI, because everyone who is not using it will be overtaken by someone else at the end who is using AI, because it's more efficient, it's less costly, and it's more individual at the end. So but we have to pave the way for it, and trying to convince everyone to use it. Otherwise, they are out of the game. Yeah,
I think the answer also, I think, is that we have to explain and describe the potential to people, in a way which they can, use usefully themselves, rather than, because otherwise they're assuming this is something that's going to be run by them up there rather than us down here. It's that sort of situation, isn't it? And I think it's very difficult, really. But Axel, I promised on my honour that I've got to stop our discussion, because I was allowed an hour, because I think actually I'm very grateful to you. We have actually recorded this session, so I think there's quite a lot of excerpts, for instance, that we would like to put out to the members. And also, there may well be other questions arising from this as when we do that. And if you don't mind, I hope we can come back to you with points that are raised afterwards, as well as during this discussion. But
yes,
I just want to say how grateful we are to you, Axel, for your time. And I'm deeply impressed.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, to all the others, let me say also, you have a wonderful representative for your, and so Timothy is a wonderful guy, very intelligent and sharp thinking. And so, but I have to mention this was always wonderful to work with you, and this is my experience. So,
and the nicer I am to you, Axel, the more Haribo sweets you supply me with.
Yes, Haribo, yes.
No, thank you very much indeed. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attendance and interest this evening. I think it's been a very useful session. And on that basis, then, I'm going to close things down. So thank you so much. Thank you.
All the best to you. Bye-bye.
All the best. Thank you very much. Thank you.